Season 6 has had its day, and Season 7 is on its way. Another year has had its run. Time for us to have some fun. All we need is Santa Claus. And a case of Dos Equis, of course. Live from the basement of Voodoo Sound. Welcome to the Mojo Radio Show Rap Party. I thought we were a rock show.
Everybody, and welcome to our Season 6 Rap Party on the Mojo Radio Show. We are winding down for the season. It's been a big season, probably, I suspect, one of our biggest ever seasons, just in terms of the quality of guests, the enjoyment we've had, a few laughs, Rocktober, and all the rest. But this is our rap party. We've got all the treats out. All the gang are here. Everybody ready to rap this season. Robbo, what we've got here, let's just go around the studio. It's like a little party, like a little rock and roll rap party.
I love the balloons and streamers you've got hanging up everywhere. You've worked very hard.
Now, over here, this bowl is the roasted Grillo crickets. And I've got some cricket energy bars. This one's the cacao fudge. So we love our friends. Now here, Pete Harrison, not only have I got you a coffee, but Pete Harrison's also sent us some Fish of a Roast chocolate-coated coffee beans, gold. Now over here, this tray, I know they look a bit odd, but these are Tim Tams. And what I've done is I've art decoed chili from Chili Bomber across, like red stripes across them. So that's why they look a little odd.
Do you know what I'm asking for Christmas, just as a by-the-by, is Arnott's are coming out with a cherry ripe flavoured Tim Tam.
That's wrong on so many levels, isn't it? Now that will be a case study. That'll be, I guarantee, in 2 years' time, that'll be, what were they thinking?
I think that'll be a taste tester for our next international guest. That'll be our next Vegemite.
So let me keep going around the studio. We've got our plate of Revies here. So if you're not already jacked up enough, there's some Revies here, which are little caffeinated strips. You can stick one of those on your tongue, you're good to go. And then, of course, over here, Lofty, out of the way. Lofty's sitting on the esky.
Hey, Gary, remember, I know what you guys are like. I'm not letting you drink all my beer.
That's got a carton of Dos Equis on ice.
Nice.
So if we've got all these things ready, I think we're good to go.
I think we should get into it.
The Mojo Radio Show. Ho, ho, ho.
By the by, as a tip of the hat to you, I have had a number of phone calls and emails and posts asking me whether we were actually at Bondi Beach. And one guy said, it sounded like you dubbed in beach sounds with seagulls and stuff. Were you actually there, or were you taking the piss in the studio and just making it out? And I said, no, it's legit. We actually were. I think we even got some photos we're posting onto.
We have some photographic evidence that's up on Facebook if you care to look. I think more than me take the credit, I think we should probably be pointing the credit to Adam from Athletic Greens and his very generous donation of some top-end OB gear.
That actually is true. That was pretty mecca. In fact, we've now got our own proper. We've been renting it. So anybody who heard the show, we were renting it. But now we've actually, through Patreon, Adam has made a huge donation to us. Now we've got our own rig. So you will hear us talking to pretty much any international guest saying, if you come to our country,
anyone who'll have us.
We're going back to Bondi.
Robbo's Remarkable Facts.
It's about time. Let's go.
All right, before we go into our epic guest this week, remarkable fact, go.
Remarkable fact, being the end of the season, I've found something a bit festive. Did you know that the song Jingle Bells was not actually written as a Christmas carol at all? It was actually written for Thanksgiving.
Did not know that.
It was written in 1857 by a guy called James Lord Pierpont. And it was published under the title One Horse Open Sleigh. He wrote it for his Sunday school about some local reindeer races that took place during Thanksgiving. Another remarkable fact, Jingle Bells was also the first ever song to be broadcast from space. How cool is that?
Another remarkable fact, that was actually on Explosive Hits 1857.
That's right. I think it was top of the Spotify list too.
This is Leif Babin, former Navy SEAL, co-author of the books Extreme Ownership and The Dichotomy of Leadership, president of Echelon Front, and you are listening to the Mojo Radio Show. Stand by to get some.
Our guest this week is Pat McNamara, known as Pat Mack. I honestly say this is the best finish to season 6 because I am an absolute wrap on this guy. Pat McNamara spent 22 years in the United States Army and Special Ops, and he works in the Premier Special Missions Unit, and he built a reputation as an impeccable marksman. Although he'll say he wasn't a sniper, he is known for his accuracy and precision and tactical effectiveness on weapons. That's what he does today. He trains people on tactical applications of shooting, and he works with special ops people today in situational awareness and how to handle firearms. But his social media stuff I love because he has his own style. He is his own brand, but he brings a stand by to get some to everything he does. And he is a special breed of man. Patrick McNamara, welcome to the Mojo Radio Show.
Right on. Thank you for having me.
Pat, when somebody meets you for the first time and they ask you what you do, how do you like to reply?
You know what? I reply now by saying I teach badassery because I have my own business.
That's awesome.
I have my own business called T-Max Inc. and where I teach everything basically badass. I teach shooting, fighting, close quarter battle, combat strength training, those kinds of things. So they always get a chuckle out of it when I say I teach badassery. Initially they say, "What do you do?" I say, "I'll run my own business." "Oh, what's that business?" "I teach badassery." And they look at me like, "What in the hell are you talking about?" So then I go into it a little bit more.
When I first came across your work and I heard you interviewed on maybe Never Quit or Rogan or one of those shows, you talked about the world of the Sentinel. And I know you've written about the Sentinel.
Yes, sir.
What's the philosophy behind that, Pat? What's it mean to be a Sentinel?
The book I wrote, Sentinel, the subtitle is How You Can Be the Agent in Charge of Your Own Executive Protection Detail. So take what an executive protection detail, like say State Department, Secret Service, those kind of things, and you whittle it down to a micro level. So what can we do as an individual without all the resources and stuff to replicate on a micro level what Secret Service or executive protection can do to help protect either ourselves and our loved ones, or just anybody in our community. And there's a lot of things that we can do day by day to kind of we can't replicate it 100% because that takes a massive support system, and it's exhausting. It's a shitty freaking job to be somebody's personal protection. But I basically go through that and how to do it, how to live day by day, and just make you and your loved ones live in a safer environment.
And I think that's what grabbed my attention with the stuff you do, Pat, because we live in this world where we have our faces in a screen, in and out of the office, on the streets. We have this addiction with our faces down in a screen. And then I heard you talk about that. And then you look at the news where daily there is something happening somewhere in the world, in a cinema, a shopping center, a main street, a festival, a music concert. It's becoming so prevalent now. Is your work becoming even more important today to become the agent in charge and take personal responsibility? Are you finding that even today it's becoming even more and more of a priority?
Yeah, no doubt. Now, don't get me wrong. I do not believe that we live in a more dangerous world than yesteryear. And matter of fact, statistics will prove that it's a safer world because there's eyes everywhere. There's cameras, there's videos, everybody's, filming, etc. So to be a predator, you have to go through, it's a more arduous process. However, I think we are in more danger now because of what you said. We are living in a 45-degree syndrome. People are fat, happy, complacent button pushers, living in 45-degree syndrome, constantly staring at a device or something. And we have relinquished our primal defense mechanisms like situational awareness and intuition, those kind of things. So we are, as a human, at a primal level human, we are devolving. We are super complacent. We accept mediocrity. We've got our head up our asses. So, there's a lot of occurrences happening that don't have to, if one would just be switched on just a little bit. There's a Cooper's color code, from white to red. White being zombie mode, red being fighting for your life. And when you go out, especially if you're with your family, you should be at least in the yellow. Most people are still in the white. They're in complete zombie mode. And a lot of incidences that are tragic or cause injury can be mitigated if we just pull our head out of our asses and look around every once in a while. And only because it's on the tip of my brain, you were talking about people. I recently looked up a statistic because I talked on a podcast last week about it, and I had to look it up to confirm it. In the United States, 11 teenagers a day die from texting and driving. You just mentioned the 45-degree syndrome. Just run that for us. So when your head is cocked down and you're looking at your phone, your head is in a 45-degree angle, as opposed to straight up 90-degree angle, looking at the sky 180. So that's how I see people walking around. They're in 45-degree mode. They're bent down and they're hunched over and they're looking at their phones. And kids nowadays, they do it so often that they're falling into this. Not rut. They're falling into this thing called complacent adaptation, where their spines are developing that way, where their whole C-spine is developing in an arched format now because they're always looking down like that.
What's interesting, Pat, when I hear you talk about this, and I've become very mindful of it since hearing and looking at your work, is there a situation where this is also appropriate in the workplace? So I hear you talk a lot about the street, and we'll get to that as we progress through the show. But just in your experience with the people you're working with now, have you had the experience, or have you been asked to transition this thinking into the office or boardroom environment and not just on the street?
I haven't been asked. Like as an individual, down to an individual level. But man, it could really be beneficial. I know that. But even, let's say, and I'm not sure this even answers part of your question, but let's say, that's your day to day. You're living in an office, and you're working out of a cubicle or what have you. We become extremely complacent where we fall into a routine, and the routine is just day-to-day operations. And I like to say routine is the playground of a dull mind. When you fall into that routine, you're kind of giving up your thinking and thought process. You could just keep switched on by maybe parking in a different place every day, taking stairs instead of the elevator, those kind of things, and doing a little mind exercise during breaks and stuff like that. So I would love to talk to like corporate America about, or corporate world period, about how to just kind of adapt a better mindset, because not only will that mindset help them in, let's say, time of crisis, but if you've got a good, strong mindset, that leads to good attitude, and that attitude leads to confidence, and confidence and performance work hand in hand.
What was that quote? Routine is the what of a dull mind?
I like to say routine is the playground of a dull mind.
Next year's Rocktober poster, Gary.
It's going on the wall.
I was writing it down and I missed the most important part. I had to go back. Sorry.
It's called McNamara Gold right there out of the box. 10 minutes in, Pat drops gold.
I've got tons of them, man.
I'll keep dropping them. I'll keep writing them down.
Hey, we got plenty of time.
Yep.
Pat, I have to tell you a story, which I don't often share stories from the studio, but this is a real life example. I had traveled to a city here in Australia. I had traveled to my hotel and I had walked to the hotel, and being the agent in charge, having seen your stuff, and I was in the middle of doing preparation for this interview, But as I checked into my room, I had scoped out where the fire escape was, the quickest way to it, and I had set my room up that if should something happen, I could get the most valuable things in my bag in 60 seconds and head to the fire escape.
Right on.
And bugger me, I kid you not, I hadn't even grabbed a glass of water and been at the toilet and the fire alarm went off.
Wow.
And and this is a true example of how I think sometimes the work we do on social gets bagged a lot, but then we don't look at the flip side of stories that you may or may not hear in your general day.
Right.
Now, it turned out to be a false alarm, but my point was it may not have been. And by having heard your stuff, and then as a matter of course, when you go through, as simple as checking in with family or just on a business trip, that it was sorted and I would have been, good to go. So I find this work to be something where people consume knowledge, but we consume it, but we don't use or experiment with it, make it part of our day-to-day, so it never becomes knowledge. And I don't know, I wanted to share that with you because I think there is such value in this in the world we live in. But the other thing that I want to ask about is that in the absence of doing that, do we find ourselves in that complacent adaptation where we are just assuming that's how it's always done?
Yeah.
And we're going
that's
with
what
the herd?
happens. Sheep run with the sheep, and running with the sheep may not be the best recourse because they don't have a plan. The sheep don't have a plan. They're looking for easiest avenue of egress, and they're going to follow the first new boogies. So if you have a plan, we don't plan to fail, but we fail to plan. And when we do, we get experience. And experience is something we get shortly after we need it. So there's a couple more nuggets for you. But I wrote an article about that not too long ago about how, following the sheep may not be the best recourse because they don't have a plan. So if I'm in a venue, let's say there's a crowd, and I just went to my North Carolina State Fair with my kids, who are 16 and 18, so they're Generation Zers, so they, they're not too switched on, because kids nowadays have never been bored. They've always had a device in their hand, and there's danger in that, never being bored. But walking through there, I would tell them, and they're used to it now with me, saying, hey, if anything happens, we're going that way. If anything happens, meet me here. If anything happens, now we're going that way. Or I would quiz them, hey, if something happened right here, what is the best way to go? And I like to see their gears in motion, and they go, you know what? I would go that way because we could get through that fence and it's closest to the parking lot. And I'm like, damn, man, good planning. Good on your part for saying that. All right, so that's our primary plan. So at least we have a primary plan in place. And that could be there's been tragedies in bars and in movie theaters and stuff where there's fires, and people won't even run to the fire escape, and it's right there. It's right there because they've never seen it. They're exiting the same way they came in because that's what they know. So following the sheep out there, it's not a good idea because there's been people who, there's been I forget a recent incident where it was a bar or a movie theater or something like that, where everybody ran during a fire toward the exit the same way they came in, and there was a clearly marked fire exit, and nobody went out that way.
You just spoke about planning, Pat, and you, from what I understand, you are a planned guy. Do you still use a whiteboard to plan your day and what's ahead?
Do you know this about me? Is that why you asked? Because I absolutely do.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I have two whiteboards, and I recommend this to guys as part of therapy. Now, I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but guys like me who spent a long time in the military, a career in the military, especially special ops. When you get out, if you have no purpose, no meaning, it's easy to slip into a dark place. So one of the things I tell guys for therapy is get a whiteboard. The night, before you go to bed, jot down what your plan is for tomorrow. And it doesn't have to be super ambitious. It could be as simple as, number 1, bring my wife coffee. Number 2, do this. Number 3, but have those things planned out. For me, it's a little more ambitious, but I have one that sits by my coffee maker, a whiteboard, and that's got all of my basically it's my essential task list. And I have another board in my laundry room that has stuff like, Mojo podcast this time, this day, this podcast this time, this day, meeting with insurance agent this time, so it's got all those things on it. So it's got the kind of the long-term, not the low-hanging fruit stuff, but the stuff that I need to get to at some point, but it's not tomorrow. So I think it's important to have those, especially for guys like me who, you've spent a long career in the military. You get out and you kind of have no purpose, and you lose drive too. And I know a lot of guys have fallen victim to it, and they told me that the whiteboard has really helped them out.
And you were, after 22 years in special operations, you said there was a moment where that happened to you where you said, I'm out. And you made that decision. What was that moment, Pat, where you went, after all this time, a couple of decades, in something you were passionate about that you loved and you were very, very good at, you went, I'm out. What was the moment?
Well, it was kind of an amalgamation of events. It was one, I had done pretty much all I can do, in the military. I was satisfied. I had to think, if I got out, would I have any regrets? Is there anything else I need to accomplish? So the answer was no. Big driving force for me was I had little kids at home, and I needed to be there for them because their mom wasn't. So I needed to be there. I needed to be their the shepherd of my flock. I needed to be there for them, and that was my big deciding factor. Was little kids at home. Their mom's not doing what she can to make sure that they grow up the right way. I have to be there for them. I can't keep doing this, working at this tempo, when there's a good chance of me getting really jacked up or not breathing.
So if I can camp there for a second, Pat, because you mentioned many military guys can go into a dark place, which I'm always fascinated about. When you're in special ops and you are on top of things, it's never quit, get it done. Yet you leave military and many vets can fall into a dark place. And you went to a place that was pretty dark yourself. And you just mentioned your kids. You told a story about having a conversation with your son. He was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years old. And you said to him, I don't love you. I am in love with you. And he cried. And you said to him, you took ownership and said, this thing is defeating me. When you think of that story today, take us there. How did that feel? What was that event like for you?
It was, it came at the right place because I had almost capitulated to darkness. I was going down that rabbit hole, and I was digging in deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I didn't have self-realization until I had talked to my son that night. And, he was the sweetest little boy. Oh, my God, ridiculous. When he cried when I told him that I was in love with him, it was just a sweet cry, just tears. It wasn't bawling or anything. But I realized, damn, man, I got out for them. Now I'm going this way. Their mom is getting no better, and I've got to. They are still relying on me. They're 100% my dependent. So I put out my running shoes that night with no plan in the morning. Put out my iPod, and next morning got up early, put my running stuff on, and went for a jog, having no idea where I was going to go. And it ended up being like 10 or 12 miles. I came back starving, and then I ended up working out on my driveway for about another hour and a half, 2 hours, just going crazy. And I had this epiphany that said, this hole that I was digging, dude, I'm not buried. I'm fucking planted. I've been planted. I am ready to grow now. So it was a moment for me that I was very fortunate enough to be able to come out of it without any support mechanism, without any help from anybody else, And as a matter of fact, not only not having support, but being beat down day after day after day after day, with no support, no love. I mean, I had the support from my kids, but not from a support mechanism with whom I was living at the time. So I'm very fortunate to have done it on my own.
It's fascinating, Pat. When you think back to that time, there's been an underlying thread through the show for the last couple of years around identity or alter ego. And I'm curious to go, if you sit here today and you either have become or are becoming the man you want to be, who was the identity of that guy who decided to go for a run that day? What's the identity of that guy versus the identity today? Who were those two men? What could you see? What can you feel when you think about those two men?
The guy who said I'm going for a run was the real me, and I almost forgot who I was. And there was so much strife in my relationship at the time, and it was a relationship that went on for a long time. In the last 5 years of it, I lived in my bonus room. I just didn't want to leave the house. I lived in a little teeny room above my garage. I didn't want to leave the house because I was taking care of my kids. And I remembered for that moment who I was. And I'm not a rest on your laurels motherfucker. I'm not somebody who says, oh, yesterday I was this badass, because I'm a badass tomorrow. But I had to remember who I was. And then I realized I'm still that guy. I'm still him. I'm still the same guy. And now today, that was seven years ago. Today, I'm the best version of myself that I've ever been, ever. I mean, I am at the top of my game. And I tell people that when people say, what are your regrets? What would you change about your past? I wouldn't change a freaking thing, because I love who I am right now. I would relive all that bullshit all over again, every single bit of it, just to be the person that I am today and to be with this woman that I love. I would do all of it all over again.
And you said your partner today, you described her as the catalyst to a new you.
Yeah.
What does a partner bring to a Pat McNamara that as a catalyst? What is that catalytic bit of a new partner that's helped to bring out, reinforce, and keep the new you?
Man, I mean, there's several different things. One is my wife is my biggest fan. She's my biggest supporter, and we make each other better versions of ourselves. We make each other better us's. I've never, sometimes I tell people, you have to endure the bullshit in order to savor the sweet freaking treats at the end. And I wish it on everybody. I wish that good life on everybody. I wish them, especially if they endured a lot of heartache, a lot of bullshit. I wish them, well at the end of the day. Because it happened for me, and my wife and I have been together now for 6 years, and we haven't had a single cross word. Not one. Mostly because we're both done with it. We both came out of shitty relationships, and sometimes you need that. You need a shitty portion of your life to appreciate what good is. Because I really, really appreciate everything that is good in every portion of life. Even when I fall flat on my dick, and I have bad days, I am very grateful for who I am and what I have, because I've endured a long, there was a long part of my life that was just, I was extremely miserable. And I had no idea how miserable I was until I was extremely happy.
Pat, out of this period, I've heard you a number of times use three words, which is attitude, aptitude, and desire. Mm-hmm. Is it out of this period where, as you describe, you started to blaze? Is that where those three words became kind of the values or core of who Pat McNamara is?
Yes. I tell you, attitude is not something that can be. It can be learned. It can't be taught, but it can be learned. It can be emulated, right? Because we are by primal. At our primal level of learning is, vicarious learning, aping, mimicking. So it can't be taught, but it can be learned, right? To see somebody with good attitude resonates, and positivity resonates just as well as, unfortunately, as negativity does. But having that attitude is nothing more than really being positive. It's about seeing yourself being able to succeed at whatever you put your mind to it. But that attitude has to be nurtured. It has to be fed. It can't just let to be stand stagnant. You have to constantly feed that attitude. And I'm not talking cockiness, I'm talking just good attitude. And aptitude is it's not necessarily what your IQ score is, but how you can maybe come up with problems to ambiguous situations, or how you react during times of critical thinking. And I love those three words when I'm talking about being able to teach somebody something. If they have attitude, aptitude, desire, I could pretty much teach them anything that they want. And a lot of people look to me right now to teach them some badassery. And if they've got those three things, I'm all about it. I'm your huckleberry.
I want to ask you about pressure. And I'm curious to know what your self-talk is in a pressure. Let's talk an extreme situation when it's all going down. Because we know the military practice this, spend their time in it, so it becomes part of their being. What's the default dialogue that you go through, Pat, when you're in extreme pressure, extreme situations? What's your own inner dialogue? What is your attitude to that sort of situation?
Well, I have this one saying that goes, limits begin where vision ends. If you can't see yourself succeeding at something, you're not going to be able to do it. Now, I was fortunate by virtue of the fact that I was in special ops for a long time, that everything we did was under scrutiny. They were all pressure cooker drills, and even training events, we always trained for worst case scenario. So it's a lot easier for somebody like me, who has lived in that environment, to be able to compartmentalize certain pressures of the whether that's life-threatening danger, or maybe even like let's say a job interview or something like that. You get a lot better at compartmentalizing those kind of stresses and pressures because, man, you've been under a lot worse. A lot worse. I mean, there's nothing that can freaking harm me anymore, man. I am impervious to all that freaking crap. Anything that life could throw at me right now, bring it, because I've been tested. I've been scared plenty of times. I've been hurt plenty of times. So I default back to that. Limits begin where vision ends, and the mind navigates the body. In other words, how we think will determine how we perform.
Here's an interesting one, Pat. You just said anything that life can throw at me, I'm ready to go. Many military guys, many outstanding leaders have been in that place only to find themselves fall through some sort of emotional crisis, or something happens and they fall into that dark place. Do you ever consciously catch yourself unconsciously slipping away? Do you actually find that moment where you feel as though you started to slip back to that old Pat, and you catch yourself and re-engage and readdress? Does that happen?
Yep, absolutely it does. And I just talked to my wife about it recently, where it's like a drug relapse, like a drug addiction relapse, like falling off the wagon. And I say to myself, hey, bro, put a rubber band around your neck and snap the fuck out of it. It's as simple as that. Just wake up from it and take a look around. Be omnicognizant. See the world around you. Look what you've got. Because it's a shitty place when you see that darkness again. When you start relapsing into like being depressed or being down on yourself. And man, I hate the feeling of it. But yes, it's happened. It happens probably a couple times a month. But it's short-lived. It's short-lived.
Can you recognize it when it's coming, or is it something that you've actually got to stop and go?
Yep, exactly. I don't recognize it as it's coming. It's while I'm in it, and then I have to just kind of put my head down, take a breath, and it takes a lot of focus. But now that I've recognized it a few times, it's easily recognizable. Now, so I think I could battle it and win without going back into any relapses, only because I recognize it so fast when I'm in it now that it's a lot easier to come out of it. But there was a couple of times where I remember moping and thinking, well, this is just where I am now. And, putting the rubber band around my neck and snapping the fuck out of it, going, nope, this is not where I'm at. But yeah, I could recognize it a lot faster.
Is pulling on the running shoes a trigger, or what they would call a totem for you, Pat? When you get to that moment, is falling back to the thing that was the trigger to help you change your world and get on this new projection? Is that something you use when you recognize you go back to a totem or a routine like that? Just get the running shoes out, let's just start over. Do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not so much running. I co-own. I have so much shit going on, but one of the things I do, I co-own MMA gym in town, and at noon every day, I train gratis. I train five guys at noon every day, and they're very appreciative. But they're people I know. They're people in the community. It's the owner of my pub, one of the bouncers of that pub, one of my mechanics. It's guys I know in my community, and I train them in my my combat strength training program, and they're very appreciative. But what they don't know is they're helping me out because they are dependent on me to get there every day. And so I thank them every day, and they're like, what the hell are you thanking us for? But I always think, hey, thanks for the workout, guys. And they're like, I know they have no idea why I'm thanking. I know that. But they are dependent on me to get there every day. And there's a lot of days when I get there where I'm just worn out. I am worn the hell out. And I'm a lot older than they are, too. And they expect me to, run them into the earth. But how does the best way to motivate a motivator is tell them that you're motivating them, and these guys really, they motivate me because I am motivating them. So I am dependent on them as much as they are dependent on me.
I want to try and bring a few bits together here, Pat. There is somebody today who is going to walk into a boardroom for a big presentation, or there is somebody who's going to walk before somebody for a job interview, or there is someone who's going to walk before council or a group of people to propose something and present, or to do a keynote speech. And before they walk in through the doors, their heart is pounding out of their chest. They have got all these thoughts that are the good, the bad, and the very, very ugly going through their mind. The imposter syndrome's rampant. What I want to ask you about is, how do you associate that to being in control as a sniper, to be able to focus, control your breath, and deliver in the moment? Because you have a reputation, quote unquote, as an impeccable marksman shooting with accurate, lethal results and tactical effectiveness. Take me through a sniper situation where you are you know what you have to do in order to bring yourself to that moment, that someone could take the same skills and transpose them into that situation of stepping in front of an audience?
All right. Well, I'm not a sniper, but I'm a rifleman and a pistol shooter, but not a sniper. But I can still talk what you feel it the same way. Now, it might not be palatable to every individual going through that, because when we're talking human beings, it's case by case, and the situation is going to dictate, and it's going to be a little bit different depending on the specific human being. So what you say to one person may not be palatable to another. However, big thing is I tell guys, hey, number one, don't look where you don't want to go. Just don't do that. Don't look where you don't want to go, because if you look there, that's where you're going to go. If you look at failure, if you think there's a possibility that I can screw this up, then you're going to freaking screw it up. But if you're thinking, all right, bullseye, it's impossible for me to miss. I am, today it is impossible for me to miss. It's impossible, and having that good mental attitude is there's something to be said about it. I mean, it's real. It's not false. Having mental attitude and mental blueprinting and playing a highlight reel is extremely important as well. For instance, seeing yourself succeed from a perspective that maybe a camera is behind you, and you could take the same thing going into the boardroom. Follow that camera in and see yourself succeeding. Don't see yourself falling flat on your dick. If you do, however, if you fall on your face and you flub a word or what have you, you have to have this ability, and this can be practiced to some degree, but you have to have the ability to fail quickly. In other words, don't spend that much time failing. Spend a very short amount of time failing, and also remember that it's human to fail, right? It's human. It's a biological requirement for us to fail. But when we do fail, we need to fail quickly. We need to learn from the past, prepare for the future, and perform in the present. We cannot let that failure become a recurring theme. I think I answered that question pretty much. I don't know where I went with that.
No, it's interesting. I'm always fascinated with people who can bring themselves to the moment, Pat, and we hear a lot about the military and the training you go through in extreme situations. Yet a lot of us in our day-to-day life are going through, it's different, but it's the same in terms of the emotions we feel and trying to bring ourselves to the moment. And I do think you're quite right. A lot of people visualize what they don't want to happen, and almost in a way, do they feel cocky? It's funny when you mention that. For people to say, there's no way I can miss this target, and they walk up, and I've seen you do the shooting with the pistols and tactical response stuff that you train the guys on in part of the Sentinel. But it's almost like if you say that to yourself, you feel guilty or cocky, because you kind of go, yeah, but I don't really believe it, but I should say it because Pat said I should say it. That's actually quite a mind spin, isn't it? To actually be able to convince yourself that you believe in yourself, convince yourself that you're convinced.
So there's these isms, I call these things training-itis. We do a lot of stuff in training because it makes sense and it appeases the training environment in which we're in. And so flat range mentality is very specific to shooting. So it's shooting drills. And guys will do things on a flat range because they work on a flat range. And then what happens is this guy will teach it to this guy who will teach it to this guy. And they all fall in love with this technique, tactic, or procedure because it works on the flat range. Now we fall into a rut I call institutional inbreeding. So this guy heard it from this guy who heard it from this guy. It's all making sense. They're all falling in love with this thing, and then told to this guy, etc. And then, and this institutional inbreeding can last for until somebody calls until somebody raises the bullshit flag on it. But there's a lot of different examples, but that's very shooting specific, but you could relate that to, to other facets and parts of life. How we might do a safety drill or an emergency drill because it works in the classroom, but will it really work if there's, an explosion or a fire, a real fire? Or when we do certain drills, like safety drills with role players. Well, is a role player really good? What if that role player is fighting for his life? That's something we can't replicate, in terms of, how a role player can act. So you could take that flat range mindset and apply it to a lot of everyday life. People do things because that's the way they've always done it.
Do you know, something I found fascinating, Pat, is you said that you had a knack for relaying information in the military. And I've never heard anybody have that as a skill set or a competency, to have a knack for relaying information. How did that consciously become something you knew there was a competency for you? And how has that benefited you since you've left the military?
It has benefited me greatly. When it comes to relaying information, like teaching somebody something, you need to be the right person who's going to say the right thing to the right person at the right time. What I've learned more than anything is brevity. So it's important to know what to know, but it's way more important to know what not to know. Because you have to give human beings permission to put the analytical mind aside and allow the body and the machinery to work. And then you have to let human beings err too. So I let them err. So long as they're not going to hurt themselves, I let them err, because otherwise we don't learn. But I'm a big fan of brevity when it comes to communication, and knowing also, taking that momentary pause to think about what you're going to say before you say it. Because I wasn't always good at that. I used to have an extreme lack for tact, and I was the master of putting my foot in my mouth until I ended up being in a leadership position, and then in a role of being an instructor in special ops. I had to change a lot of things around, and I was able to learn what worked and then what didn't work. But I was able to learn from it too.
What did you learn about that? Because it is something I wanted to ask you about, because I've heard you say you had to learn tact as a leader. Just break that down for me, Pat. What was a key thing you had to change about yourself? Because, we hear the importance of radical candor, being honest, being authentic, but tact sometimes can offend people. What specifically did you had to change about your own leadership style when you learned that?
The big one, like I said, was, not putting my foot in my mouth, taking my time and choosing my words carefully. Because when I found myself in a leadership position, I found myself working with guys who were just like me. They were all type A. They were all physical cyborgs. They were all high performers. But they all had different personalities. And they all had to be addressed a little differently. And that's human. That's very human. We all take in information, and even the way it's presented and how our body language is, the distance at which we are giving this information. So there was a learning curve there, and I am fortunate enough to have had guys on my first team who had extreme different personalities. So I was able to, that benefited me greatly, having that. And without that, being tactful, there's no way I would have been able to, number one, I wouldn't have been able to relay the information as well. Number two, it's not believable. Number three, it doesn't command respect either. So I had to develop my own type of leadership style, and I probably didn't emulate anybody else's. I didn't replicate somebody else's. I just figured out what I was good at and went with it. And when I saw that it was working, I went, all right, well, damn, let me just keep doing what I am doing and not change anything.
Did you find, as well as having to learn how you verbalize things, I've coached my son's rugby team for the past 11 years. And I found that too, because especially when the kids were younger, I'm a swearer. I swear at the drop of a hat, and that was one thing I had to curtail. But the other thing I found as a coach, even still today, that I've had to learn, is that I've also had to learn watching their reactions to what I'm saying. So to understand, okay, this kid's getting what I'm telling him. At the very beginning, I didn't understand that. I would tell the story once and hope that all 23 kids understood it. But what I've learnt now is that these 6 kids will understand it this way. These 9 kids will understand it this way. But these 2 over here need to see it or hear it or feel it this way. Is that something you had to learn, or was that innate?
No, definitely. There's a learning curve there, just like you. It's a perfect analogy, just like with the kids team. You have to learn that. You have to see it and recognize it. Because a lot of people, kudos to you for recognizing that, a lot of people will never recognize it. And they'll keep driving on and doing the same thing over and over again. They'll keep teaching the same way where it's not going to work for everybody. Like right now, I do 1 class a week in a different state every week. Tomorrow morning, I go to Kansas for 2 back-to-back 2-day courses. And I'm going to have 16 different guys on each 2-day block, and they all learn a little differently. And some need to be stroked, some need to be left alone, some need reassurance, some you can joke around with because you know that they have thick skin, so you can fuck around with them a little bit. Others have very thin skin, so you need to know when to back off and make sure that anything can't even be construed as making fun of them, because they could get poopy pants pretty quick, and down the freaking toilet goes their ability to perform too. So yeah, that's something that is learned, and if you're able to learn that, good on you.
Pat, you, just to finish this up, this is very interesting, but I find you in a way to be a walking contradiction, because you eat well, but then you love your beer every night. Yep. You smoke cigars, yet you work out super hard. You play metal, yet you watch birds. You're a bird watcher. You love hardcore metal, yet you play violin.
Right.
It's just, I love the fact that you have these polar opposites.
Yeah.
It makes up Pat McNamara. You just seem to love life and having a crack at stuff.
Yeah.
How does that play out in your mind?
You know what? I guess I don't. It's funny hearing it from some. That's the first time I ever heard it, and even thought about it like that. Because, but I think it's cool as hell. And one of the cool things about it is more. It's catching on. A lot of people. They write to me and say, "Hey man, thanks for introducing me to metal, because now I am a metalhead." Or, "Hey, I picked up a bird guide and some binos because of you." Or, "Hey man, look at this drawing I did. You encouraged me to start drawing." But with the my dog's going crazy out there. She's barking at. Oh, he's right. All right. But yeah, walking contradiction. That's pretty funny. My diet is ridiculous. So it's extremely healthy. I eat nothing but meat and veg. That gives me the opportunity to goof around every night a little bit, because I want to drink a few beers with impunity and smoke a cigar. I have a saying too. You see that you can see it, but you can't. So on my shirt right now, I have a saying that's. I say every night is Saturday night, but every morning is Monday morning. I want to go out. I want to shut the gears down a little bit every night, go out, have a couple pints every night. But I have to remember that the very next morning, Monday morning, and it doesn't matter what day of the week it is. The next morning is Monday morning, so I've got to be up and ready to get some. It's funny, the walking contradiction. I guess I'd never even thought about it, because I've got a lot of like sissy hobbies, like flower gardens, and I have raised gardens. I just put in today I did a little bit of time nurturing my winter garden. my cabbages and my broccoli and stuff like that. I have 7 chickens that I tend to also, and I love my chickens, and I go in there and talk to those little feathered dinosaurs. But yeah, it's fun. I think it's important to enjoy life, especially, guys like me who run their own business. It's a scary world. When you run your own business, you have to work constantly. You could never stop. You have to keep jamming shit into the pipeline. Any low-hanging fruit opportunity, you've got to snag that up and maybe save it for later in case shit goes south and the well dries up. You've got to have a backup plan. So it's important to have little escapes, small escapes, small hobbies. I think having hobbies is very important on several different levels. Number one, it's very therapeutic. Number two, it exercises the creative lobe, the poetic lobe of your brain, the right lobe of your brain. And when you exercise that, the other part gets stronger as well. So yeah, man. Yeah, that's funny. I love that walking contradiction.
But having kids too, you would understand that you want to expose your kids to all this stuff as well, right? I mean, because a bit like you, I love everything from jazz all the way to metal myself. So, you want your kids, not just musically, but in life in general, you want them to experience or you want to expose them to as much as you can.
Yeah, and it's, and it's good to be interesting, and interested at the same time. When I chat with strangers, like I travel different state every week, and I go to a sports bar usually at night to eat so I can have a couple pints of something on tap with my meal, and occasionally somebody will chat with me, the guy next to me. And I love it when a guy is interesting. That way I can just shut up and listen and go, damn, man, that's pretty freaking cool, It's nice to be interesting, to have interests outside of, hey, what do you do? Well, I work, and I go home and put my kids to bed. That's their grind every day. Yeah, I mean, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty short-lived that we like, especially when you start getting older. When you start getting older, and how when you were a kid, you could say, oh, I can't wait for next month. Now it's like, dude, I don't want next month to come. I hope today just goes on and on forever because, man, carpe diem, because you ain't got too many of them DMs left. So you better seize that thing.
Ain't that the truth?
Yep.
Pat, if I take you back to your childhood, you just talked about being a kid, and you were a creative kid, and you were into lots of different creative stuff, and you said that your parents actually supported all of your creative endeavors. How did they specifically do that? Like, when you think back to your mum and dad, the people around you, how did they encourage those creative endeavors?
Well, it was more my dad than anything. My dad was one of those interesting guys. And when I was a kid, he was busy. My parents worked their asses off. My dad was a cop at night, a teacher during the day, and going part-time to school to get another degree. So he was constantly, moving. And he always had time for us kids. And at the time, I was among 3 boys and 2 little sisters. And my brothers were, typical tough guy sports and stuff like that. I had all the sissy hots. And, he probably did a lot of sign, kind of like that. But he was 100% supportive when I said, what do you want for Christmas? Well, I really want a unicycle, and it's not something that a typical, 11, 12-year-old would ask. But, they saved their pennies and got me a unicycle. But damn, I freaking learned how to ride that thing. And I would ride it. I was the only kid in junior high school who would ride a unicycle to school, of course. And, but I was very fortunate in that, when he would bring home scrap paper from school, so I could draw on the back, because we didn't have money, so he could, buy me drawing pads and stuff. He would we were scraps and we were hand-me-downs and that kind of thing. So I was, very fortunate that.
If I take you to that time, Pat, you're 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
There is a yard sale. You walk into that yard sale and you buy your first ever album, which was?
It was Black Sabbath, Paranoid. I bought it for $0.25. I brought it home, and I played that sucker. I'm a record player non-stop. Now, I still have that same album. It's right up there in my bookshelf. That same album is up there.
One of the greatest albums of all time.
My question is, favorite track?
On that one, probably just War Pigs, only because my wife and I love singing that one together.
Now in darkness, world stops turning. Ashes where the body's burning.
Nice. What a great track.
Yep.
So that leads me into my next question. What metal track could I play for you that if I listened to the lyrics of that track, it would give me the best insight into Pat McNamara, the man? So I listen to the track and go, yep, that's the guy. What track would I play for you?
How about Pantera Domination?
Oh, now you're talking my language. Love it.
Or there's another one too, Lamb of God, Descending.
Nice, man. You go deep with this stuff, don't you?
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. I love where you went.
Nice.
Pat, I'm conscious of your time, so just before we wrap this up, something I heard you say that I want a couple of threads to pull on just before we close this thing. It was fascinating. You said in the teams, you didn't need to be motivated. You were all, to a man, driven. Yet today, we lean too much on others to motivate us through podcasts, videos, mentors, books. Where is that sweet spot? Where is that sweet spot where we are relying on others to motivate us? Where is that sweet spot where we take our own responsibility?
All right. I every class I teach, I culminate with a couple mantras. I don't have a good way of answering this, so I'm hoping this is a pretty good way. There's a mantra that I wake up to. I'm not much of a sports fan and stuff. I'm big into sports psychology. I love that, but I don't know teams and players and anything like that. But there was a NFL football player in the 90s named Jerry Rice, Hall of Famer, but trained on his own a lot. And people would say, why? How do you do this? And his mantra, dude, is I will do today what others won't so I can do tomorrow what others can't. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
That's awesome.
So, you know what? So I actually like to go to sleep before bed and think about that. So what am I going to do tomorrow? That I could wake up and say, when I wake up, I could say that I will do today what others won't, so I could do tomorrow what others can't. And again, it might be minuscule. It might be something. It could be, increase your brain power a little bit, increase your balance, work on your diet, educate yourself on something new, be a better person, do some chores that you haven't done, do a good deed for somebody, one or two, save a little bit of money. It could be the simplest things. Another one of my mantras I invented is, if you cloned yourself yesterday, can you kick your clone's ass tomorrow? Which means just try to make a small incremental improvement to yourself every day. And then, at the end of the day, you can be introspective and say, did I do that thing today? And that's another reason why I like to reward myself every day, because usually every day I've done that thing, that one thing that made me a little bit better today than I was yesterday.
Pat, I've got so much more that I could ask you about. I'm going to hand over to the big man here in the way too tight fitting T-shirt for the Nifty 90. Do you have 90 seconds?
Yeah, sure.
Robbo's Nifty 90.
Okay, so Lola, start the clock. What's your favourite colour?
Green.
Favourite pizza topping?
Pepper. It's onions, green peppers, and hamburger.
Are you a tea or a coffee person?
Coffee. I have my own blend, as a matter of fact, from Invader Coffee. It's called T-Max Inc. Blaze Ops Blend. Double dark.
That seems to be a theme we come across with you ex-vets in the States. Do you all go and get into coffee when you get out of the service?
There are a few, like Black Rifle. They're a big one. And then Invader, they're a big one. Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Finish this sentence for me. I never get tired of
sex.
What's something you've always wanted to do but haven't done yet?
Man, I've done a lot of stuff though, but that's one thing. I don't want to travel much more. I'm getting kind of tired of traveling, but I'd love to go to the foothills of the Andes. 3
words that your service buddies would use to describe you.
Whew. Man, I have to be honest here, because some would say dickhead. Some would say machine.
Yeah.
And motivating.
And your chance to retort, 3 words you would use to describe yourself.
I would say I know this now about me. I am genuine. And this is all at the risk of sounding hubris, but and the other one is, man, I am fucking clean. You can peel back all the layers. You're not going to find, you might find dirt from ages ago, but I'm so clean you can eat off me. I like to be clean and genuine. And then, I'm still driven.
So the last question and the big one, I'm going to make you an honorary member of the Mojo radio show for a minute, because at the end of each show, we play a song, a play-out song, which is usually something to do with the show. So I'm going to make you an honorary member of the show today for this week, and you get to pick the play-out song. But because heavy metal has a bit of a bad name out there, I want you to give me a song that we can play out with, that you would play to someone who you were trying to convert to heavy metal.
Oh, all right. Yeah. All right. So one song that I was trying to convert him. Oh, I got a good one. This is a great one, and I hope you can find it because you love this song. But it's called. It's a band called McNamara, and the song is "Down Again."
Awesome. Sounds like me.
Yeah.
Pat, thank you so much for your time. It would be remiss of me not to finish with another Pat McNamara mantra, because you finish a lot of your stuff with "make it habitual."
Yeah, right.
How do you go about making stuff habitual for you? How do we do that? That is your close. You talk about the agent in charge, and then you say, make it habitual.
Make it habitual.
But most people don't.
Yeah.
We kind of do it once and we don't do it. How do we make it habitual?
It doesn't take much if it takes a certain amount of meaningful repetitions to perform a task until you are performing it at an intuitive or subconscious level, intuitively or at a subconscious level. So initially, you have to do a task with deep thought. You have to do it and think about it until you don't have to think about it. When you don't have to think about it, then it's habitual.
I found a quote that I wanted to read to you to close, because I think it sums up the impact that you have on your listeners, your readers, your fans, and certainly the impact you've had on me personally. A guy called James P. Cass wrote a book called Finite and Infinite Games. He said, to be prepared against surprise is to be trained. To be prepared for surprise is to be educated. And I think the way you do relay information to educate people is preparing us for surprise. I love the stuff you do. I think you do it so well. It's been such a privilege and an honour to have you and be able to spend time with you, mate. And we look forward to being able to do it face-to-face when you come to Australia, mate, because it would be a true pleasure.
Right on. Yeah, this is good. You guys are good hosts, moderators, and this was a fun podcast to do. I appreciate your time.
Hey, Santa, want to party?
The Mojo Radio Show.
Hey, mate, can you pass some more cricket bars over, please?
Try this cricket energy bar, the cacao fudge.
I have already downed the 2 that came in my my summer pack.
Could you imagine a cup of coffee, some of Pete's coffee-coated chocolate coffee beans, and some Rebbies? How jacked up would you be if you fired all that up at once?
I'm not imagining. You brought all this stuff in the studio and put it in front of me.
And we should mention that the only thing that's missing from our little summer swag Rock Patrol pack is a little bit of this.
Let's take off. Let's go get lost. All the way down to Mexico.
Dead daisies.
Yeah.
So those packs are on their way to all our Patreon supporters. Thank you very much. And I have to quickly announce that we actually have a Rock Patrol swag pack, which is legit. All the stuff you hear us talking about here in the studio for our rap party is going out to Trevor. Now, Trevor wrote during Rocktober, this is the place. Want some inspiration and a veritable kick in the pants? That's Pat Mack. Here is the place to get both. Awesome podcast with a wide variety of guests. Get on the big red bus and get on it now. Make it habitual. So,
unfortunately, the big red bus has been impounded thanks to AP's parking prowess down at Bondi.
So send us your details. Get onto our website, Trev. Send it, Trev. Big Trev. Send us a note and we will send one of these packs out to you, which has all the goodies. Coffee from Fish River Roasters and the Chili Bomb, the whole lot. It's all going to you. Plus a Mojo journal. We've put that in the pack as well. And a CD. So all goodies coming out to you. Trevor, thanks for that.
The Mojo Radio Show.
2 things to finish this up. Number 1 is I had a couple of notes from people saying, recently I said, this is a show you will want to save and put into your top shows. And a couple of people wrote and said, what are your top shows? Can we have a top 10? I went through them after 6 seasons. I couldn't get a top 10 because it was like choosing your favourite child or your favourite Dead Daisies track. There were too many of them. So I've done a top 20. Robbo, I've given that to you. If you can load that onto the book.
It is up there.
I'll put that onto the gram. Not that we do very much with that, but it's there anyway. You can grab a hold of it. I'll put it in the show notes. The second thing, which I think is my highlight for the year, is, let me set it up. I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
Cowbell. Yes,
I thought
indeed.
that was an absolute, just a stinger of a little promo we did for it. And you're telling me that people have gone on to Spotify and added to our list.
It's probably my favourite thing of the year is how involved people have got with this. And they've been on there throwing up so many songs that have cowbell that I'd either didn't know of or had completely forgotten about. So in terms of audience participation, that's easily my highlight of the year.
And Will Ferrell was recently talking to Jimmy Fallon on the Jimmy Fallon show. And Jimmy was in the clip. And if you actually, I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but when you watch this clip from Saturday Night Live, about the cowbell with Christopher Walken and Will Ferrell, look to the left of screen and you will see Jimmy Fallon pissing himself laughing as the skit goes on, which is gold in itself. It's really, every time I watch it, I laugh. But Will Ferrell was on Jimmy Fallon's show and he talked about the fact that how that cowbell skit ruined Christopher Walken's life. Have a listen to this. Lola, just roll it.
Here's the crazy thing. So I go to see Christopher Walken years later in a play. I say hello to him backstage, and he's like, you've ruined my life.
What?
people during the curtain call bring cowbells and ring them. The other day, I went for an Italian food lunch, and the waiter asked if I wanted more cowbell with my pasta bolognese. And I think he was really mad at me.
Wow,
Yeah.
no way.
And he had a little smile, but...
Well, because he had such a great career.
Do you know what? I can imagine that would be the case.
It's a great piece. I just think it's a great piece of comedy. It's a great comedy skit.
Yeah.
There are so many little intricacies with it.
Absolutely. And the funny thing that I picked up from that is I never noticed Will Ferrell's shirt before either. now he mentions it, you look at it and that makes you laugh.
I got to tell you, fellas, you're going to want some more cowbell. I think next year, season 7...
It's cowbell.
We need more cowbell.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to wrap up now, get out of here, wrap up our wrap party.
Yep.
Thank you to everybody on Patreon who have supported us through the year. This show has no advertising, no sponsors. We completely rely on Patreon just to help pay the bills for what is the Mojo Radio Show. So to all our Patreon supporters, we send out this to you. Lola? So thank you to all the gang. AP, thanks again for another season. Season 6, you've hung in there with us, mate.
Always a pleasure, Bertie, and thank you for the packet of Lions mint tarts. I did check the use-by date and they did expire last year, but it's a thought that counts.
Legend. Lofty, thank you so much for all you do, mate. I know you're very busy with MasterChef and all your television commitments. We certainly appreciate the time you put into our humble little show. All the commitments with your book that you released this year too, so thank you so much, mate.
Robbo, thank you. And Gaz, thank you as well. Thanks for allowing me to be part of all of this. It doesn't matter how busy I get, I always love being part of the Mojo Radio Show. It's awesome. So thanks for having me on board, guys.
Speaking of the book, mate, how's it going?
Mate, really good. I mean, I've had so many emails from people who obviously I don't know because they're people who have read the book and I've not actually met before, just writing to me and thanking me for sharing my story because of the parts of my story that resonated with their own story, and it's given them the courage to talk about what they've been going through as well, which has just been amazing. But let me give it a blatant plug, people. Lofty, My Life in Short. LoftyMyLifeInShort.com if you need to go to the website to find out more about it. But it'll make a perfect Christmas stocking stuffer for the one you love this year. So make sure you grab your copy at your nearest best bookshop.
Hard to guess that you work in the advertising industry, really, isn't it?
I don't know what you mean. Terms and conditions apply.
And it's good that you're standing on the esky, looking us eye to eye. Good on you, big fella. Lola.
And Lola. Well, first year in the studio. She survived too.
Yeah, I think she's due for an upgrade.
Sounds good to me.
And is there anybody else we've forgotten to thank?
This is Phil Collins here.
We should also thank the amazing guests we've had this year. I mean, you alluded to it.
Yeah, but they're not listening.
No, they're probably
they're not listening.
They're probably not. But I would like to thank them because easily our best year, and that comes down to you and the hard work you've put in tracking these guys down, mate. So well done to you too.
I've got to say that I think season 7 is going to be a ripper with the quality, just the absolute quality of guests that are lined up and agreed to come on here. Still don't understand why, but I think what's even really more exciting is people coming back again because we've got Ryan Munsey and Logan Gilbert coming on for what I think is a first for us and probably a world first. Different places all over the world coming into a four-way show. Those guys are gold. Anyway, lots to look forward to. We thank everybody for downloading our little program. Hope you have a great end of season party, which is the French for party. What are we playing out with?
Well, okay. We're a rock and roll show, but it's our rap party. Can you think of a song that might combine rock and rap together into one epic rock song?
Well, anything Kid Rock does would be my mind.
How about Run DMC and Aerosmith? Walk This Way.
Well, that also sums up our show, which is a very loose and tenuous leak, but we're out.
Like this. Seesaw swinging with the Cause love was here to stay. When she told me to walk this way, walk this way, walk this way, walk this way. Just give me a kiss. I like this. Schoolgirl sweetie with the classy kind of sassy in the skirts climbing way beneath. There was 3 young ladies in the school gym locker when I noticed they was looking at me. I was a high school loser, never made it with a lady till the boss told me something I missed. Then my next door neighbor with the daughter had a favor, so I gave her just a little kiss like this. See, so swing with the balls in the school and your feet flying up in the air. Singing, hey, diddy, what you kitty, and it made a lot of swing like I didn't care. So I took a big chance at the high school dance with my missy who was ready to play. Wasn't me, she was fooling, cause she knew what she was doing when she taught me how to walk this way. She told me to walk this way, 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 walk this way. Just give me a kiss. Like this.
The Mojo Radio Show is produced and recorded in the basement of Voodoo Sound. For more tips and tools to get your mojo working, check us out on Facebook at The Mojo Radio Show or online at themojoradioshow.com. To help us get better and give more people the opportunity to touch up their mojo, you can now find us on Patreon. Follow the links on the front page of our website, and for a coffee or two a month, you'll get regular bonus material and a copy of Explosive Hits 19, the best of the Mojo Radio Show. In the meantime, to polish your next audio production, check out voodoosound.com.au. For more about Gary, see GaryBurtwhistle.com. And to book me, go to andrewpeters.com. Andrew Peters speaking. See you next time.